This is TWiT.
The New York Times, as of this morning, updated this story about Google once again being hit with a lawsuit. So, we've heard a lot about Facebook and its antitrust concerns. We've heard that multiple states sued Facebook. But one of the things that maybe folks had not paid as much attention to is that Facebook is not alone. Yeah, Google has been sued by 30 states that are saying the company essentially, if you've ever done a search for, say your hot water heater breaks down and you don't know what's going on, so you look up hot water heater makes rattling sound. And when you see the Google search results at the top, you might see this area of text with parts of it emboldened. And they tell you, this might be the, what is it called? The sacrificial core that's, there's something wrong with it. Or did you drain the hot water heater? Because folks, and this is a pro tip to you all, you should be draining your hot water heater once a year to flush it.
Really?
Very, very, very important, in fact. But anyway, that's an aside. You see that text at the top. And so what this suit from 30 different states alleges is that Google, and I'm going to read this verbatim, Google downplayed websites that let users search for information in specialized areas like home repair services and travel reviews. They also accused the company of using exclusive deals with phone makers like Apple to prioritize Google's search service over rivals like Firefox and DuckDuckGo. So first of all, that first part is true, that you see those little bits of text. And so it may keep you from going to that website, which the argument there is then that, you're snuffing out competitors. You as Google become the website that is giving that information. I do have a little bit of a problem with the second allegation, and I do wonder if it was a mistype on the New York Times' part, or if this really is the argument in the lawsuits, which claims that these deals that Google made prioritized Google's search service over Firefox and DuckDuckGo. And for those of you who know anything about tech, you're probably going, yeah, what's going on there? And for those of you who are going, why is that a problem? As far as I know, Firefox does not at all make a search engine. DuckDuckGo is a search engine, and Microsoft makes a search engine, Bing, and there are a few others out there like Yahoo somehow. And so those search engines are certainly have a case to make. But I don't know, Jason, have you ever heard of Firefox and Mozilla having a search engine?
I mean, I understand what you're saying. It is kind of strangely worded there because to my understanding, Firefox is not in itself a search engine, right? It's a browser. What I'm guessing this has to do is the fact that Apple has made collaborative efforts in the past to largely feature Google's search results over others, right? And Firefox, correct. I don't know that would necessarily fall into that. So that seems to be the one that's really out of place there is Firefox. I mean, I don't know if that also touches on the fact that, a company like Apple doesn't really give you the chance to set a default outside of Safari. From my understanding, I'm not an iPhone user. Maybe they made a change recently that allows you to do that. So that has changed things. But I do know that Google has been very keen and adept at making sure that their search service appears on iOS devices and on Android devices, which is, a large part why the antitrust charges keep coming up. And, you could liken that to the Microsoft antitrust suit, where ultimately Microsoft ended up having to acquiesce and offer, a range of browsers when you set up a Windows install to say like, hey, look, we're not only letting people install Internet Explorer, we are giving them the option. Google's even doing this on certain Android phones in Europe. So there's something to be said for that. So it feels kind of like a combination of both of those when I read it. Yeah.
In fact, this is one of the biggest earners for Apple in its services section of its earnings every year, is the money that Google just hands over to Apple.
Right.
In order to make Google the default search engine. There was a period of time, there was an iOS version where they had undone that, but then they since changed it back. So yes, that part makes sense. That part of the lawsuit makes sense, that Apple does prioritize because of the deal where Google says, here's money, and then Apple says, thanks. And then in Safari, your default search engine is Google. And of course you can change it, but there is that prioritization there. So that makes sense. But this is, of course, these antitrust concerns are all about monopolies. And the argument, again, from this New York Times article, talks about how Google has a 90% market dominance in search. And the 90%. Argument is that, which is wild, right? And because of this, the claim is that it makes it impossible for smaller companies to even try to compete. And we have regulations in the United States where other companies are meant to be given the opportunity to compete, as opposed to a company being able to take on that alone. So this is one of, the New York Times also includes 10 other states accused Google of abusing its dominance in advertising just yesterday, and overcharging publishers for advertisements. And then 2 months ago, the Justice Department said that Google, having deals with other tech giants like Apple, throttled competition. So again, this is just the latest in a line of suits made against Google for antitrust concerns. And you're more of obviously a Google watcher than I am. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. When some of these claims are made against Apple in different areas, but certainly for the antitrust concerns, as an Apple watcher, there were things where I could go, yeah, I see what the argument is there. And somewhere I was kind of like, that feels reaching maybe. So I'm curious your reaction to this and this latest claim made against Google.
I feel like it's inevitable, and it's been on the horizon for so long, and seeing the Facebook, antitrust case, the case coming down hard on Facebook, and we're going to be hearing about that for years. It's only a matter of time before the same scrutiny, is continued to be placed on Google, at least here in the U.S. So, do I think that it's worth investigating? Well, sure. I think it's undeniable to say that Google has their hooks in everything. When it comes to search, I actually just did the search because I don't have an Amazon Echo device. So I was like, oh, wait a minute, what is the search engine powering that? And that's Bing. So there are examples of these devices, these categories that have weaned themselves or not even entered the fray with the Google dominated search. But when you're talking about 90% of the market, funneling through Google, of course that's going to get some attention. Google owns, the Android owns and manages the Android operating system, and there's a whole bunch of, things to at least look at when concerned with, the fact that Google is setting rules that require their services to be embedded on certain Android devices. The alternative is, well, don't, install a build of Android that has any of our services in it, and that is totally possible. It's called the AOSP, Android Open Source Project, and you could install a version of Android that doesn't have any Google hooks in it. But nobody does that because
that sounds miserable.
Exactly. Anybody who buys those phones, the majority of people are going to be expecting the things that make those phones the Android that they're used to, which is Google services. And that's by design, I feel like. I enjoy using Google's services, and I enjoy kind of when all of the devices that I have interoperate and interchange and everything. I can also see why that is, why that has the potential to be focused on in suits like this. And I'm not surprised at all. And I'd be very curious if there aren't ramifications that come out about this eventually, especially considering where we're headed when we take a look at a company like Facebook and what they're facing. Google's like right up there with them, and it all involves data and the power and control of that data. I think Google's, in the same category, and it'll be interesting.
Yep. Again, this is one of those things we have to watch because, as is the case with Facebook, this is a multi-year process in the end of it, and this is bound to be a multi-year process for Google as well. So
many things that we have to wait years for.
Yeah, can't unwrap any presents yet, folks.